at the NH Hotel in Berlin. It's a very nice space altogether. Breakfast was excellent. Great breakfast, which was included with group trip. This is a very nice hotel. Rooms were very comfortable. Staff was excellent too. So 1, 2 thumbs up for this hotel. On day 2, still a bit jet lagged from the travel. We got to see some beautiful homes in Berlin, which reminded me of our own embassy neighborhoods here in Washington, D.C., as well as where we stayed, oh so many years ago in Brussels, when we stayed at the home of the U.S. ambassador to the European Union. The varied architecture was quite interesting, and some expected and some not. Kicking off the day was stop 1 at the famous Glienicke Bridge that separated East from West Berlin, and where many spies and detainees were exchanged.
So here we are at the Glienicke Bridge, leading my first spy tour of Germany and the Czech Republic. We've got 30 people with us on this, watch yourself, the 30 people on this tour. We have the Glienicke Bridge on the west side looking east. We're about to get ready for a group photo. This is where my father was exchanged on February 10th, 1962 for Colonel Rudolph Abel. We can get everybody together under the lion with the bridge in the background. Teresa. Yeah, don't get hit.
This would not be good.
We're gonna do the group photo right up here with the lions. Hundreds, that was very well-to-do German royalty, I believe. All right, so we're good. Excuse me for a second, let me take a photo of this.
I wonder if the language over here is different on the other side.
Probably the same, I would think. Yeah.
So you've ever had a picture here, shooting the top of the bridge right at the demarcation line?
No, I have not.
Let me give you a
Sure.
Okay.
Just hit the button.
I can take it. Because I'll
So,
squat
It's,
down.
it's basically the mark where the East German, West German border was.
Oh. So guys, I get your way, so we get just Mr. Powers by himself.
All right.
Stand right here, sir.
I'm doing it.
And then Ash, try to time it with no cars coming by.
Yeah, I got
Get it however way that camera works. So there's a car coming here real quick. Is anyone back here in the picture?
Yeah.
Okay, then we're gonna take another shot.
Oh, they're coming.
This would be good.
That's fine.
Okay, now it's a good shot. Tesla coming. Okay, wait, Ash. Now this would be perfect.
Okay.
Okay, good shot right here.
Alright. Well, I got two.
We keep getting more people.
Hold on, we're doing a quick photo.
Trying to get one
Photo
stop people in at the side.
Choose $100 in it.
How's that?
Ready? Nope, you can stand up
Oh,
straight if
okay.
you want.
So make sure you get to the top of the bridge.
We
You
just
can
got a lot of
you can squat back
Yes.
though if you want. It's totally up to you.
Here we go.
There you go.
Got it?
All right,
All
thank
right,
you.
check those out.
And for
Take your jacket and shirt off and
yeah, for anybody who has taken photos, please upload them to the Facebook page or email them to me, and I can send them out to those who have email address onlys.
Cool. Let's keep talking.
you sneak this way.
How much time I got?
5 more minutes.
Okay, we got time. Hold on.
All right. And there's another, you can see another, beautiful, nice homes that were here at one point in time. They're starting to be remodeled and refurbished as the economy does its thing and people have money to spend. There's also a museum here right away, some side, I don't know which one. Photo here?
You and I have
All right.
the spanning of the generations.
Yes,
Sure.
spanning the span.
I'll give you my I defect to the West.
Aha.
There's capitalism and imperialism.
Ooh. Oh, sure. I can do a
Mother-daughter thing.
All right. Let's go.
And where Francis Gary Powers Sr. was exchanged, as you see in the movie Bridge of Spies. For a complete video of our tour stop at the Glienicke Bridge, the Bridge of Spies, check out my YouTube video by searching for William West Hopper, Gary Powers Bridge of Spies Walk. Back aboard the bus, we got to see some sights along the way to our next stop, the Bundeswehr, sorry, I can't pronounce that very well, Museum of Military History at the Berlin Gatow Airfield, an area that is under preservation and considerably smaller than it was in the heyday of World War II or even the Cold War era.
Stationing of the Royal Air Force from 1945 to 1994 in Gatow, and to the memory of the British soldiers who lost their lives during the Berlin blockade 1948 and 1949 to maintain the freedom and liberty of this city. Two contenders, the Mirage 3, which was still a prototype, and the Grumman F2, no, F11. Yes, the Super Tiger is called, right? Exactly. So, pardon?
I think it's called F5.
No, F5 is the that's a Northrop. I'm talking about Grumman. They both had limitations as to what the German government wanted and needed. The Starfighter overwhelmed the performance records. Altitude, speed to altitude. I'll give you an example. You take off with this aircraft, you're standing on the runway, not moving.
If you're a plane junkie like I am, there is so much to see here, both inside and outside. Sadly, those planes outside look like they are rotting away.
10 acres on this airbase. Only one was not standing anymore, not because it was destroyed. It was all basically down. It wasn't destroyed or anything.
On the inside, they were preserved and on display with lots of interesting artifacts of flight. Things that I would have thought were American, but lo and behold, yes, Germany was quite forward in the development of aircraft.
Now, this aircraft is not from the Brother Wrights. There are characteristics that tell them apart, but it's from the same era. Many of you might not know, perhaps you do. I do have a picture about that, and I can show you if you're interested. But the Wright brothers came here to Berlin in 1909 to try selling their aircraft to the military. They did the same thing in the U.S. They did the same thing in France, in England. They toured Europe trying to sell their aircraft. The German army were not interested. Much like the U.S. Army as well, didn't think they needed such things because the performance was so limited. Right? Nonetheless, the German government, the German army decided to buy 20 of these. George Orwell wrote that book to enable enough food distance. So it was delivered by such a is quite well known for being pretty much up to par with the Mustang, for example, B-51. It was a very, very powerful fighter aircraft, and trying to intercept the bomber raids over Germany, however, was a big challenge because of the escorts. The Nazis first started having their own escorts because the airplane were able to fly longer and further. They were able to accompany the bomber all the way over.
I found this statue of brothers in arms interesting, as we had the two Schneider brothers on the tour with their parents. Their grandfather had been assigned to the U.S. intelligence, I believe Army, during the 1960s and early 1970s, and their dad brought them along with their mom and the younger brother's wife to see where he had grown up while in Germany during that time. Nathan and Anthony were among the youngest tour participants, and they were a lot of fun to have on the trip. I have a Schneider family interview with them online, as well as talking about the Gary Powers Cold War Spy Tour. Search for that as well on YouTube. This was one of the only places we came across rail cars on our trip. As you can imagine, moving troops and cargo was key, and railways were the way to do it back in the mid-20th century.
Have to travel over the corridors. And to make sure that everything went smoothly, and in case the train would have to stop on the way, the United States Army ordered these cabooses, they're called in the States, right? In Canada, we have the same thing. In Europe, you don't see these things. And they are very long. And so the railroad people had a wagon like this at the back to watch over the convoy. And that was the same philosophy. This wagon was filled with, in German we say, military police, MPs, armed, ready. And their job was to make sure, and that's why the windows are like that, they would sit and watch the convoy. Not that anybody would jump off or on. And that was the idea, because of the situation, tense situation, everybody wanted to make sure that the train gets.
You will see lots of pieces of the Berlin Wall throughout this trip. This is very much a constant throughout all of Germany that we saw. Every spot had a little piece of the Berlin Wall on display.
Defense system, rocket built on the American side. This is not the first, but the second.
SA-1?
SA-3. And we have the SA-2, by the way, on the ground. It's where your bus is or around the corner, in case you have extra time.
Lunch was on our own. We stopped at a shopping mall near a train station in Berlin, exchanged some money for euros, and then wandered around the mall. Still, our bodies were on Eastern U.S. time, not the middle of the day European time. Plus, our hotel breakfast was quite filling. Then we boarded the bus and were given challenge coins from the Cold War Museum in Flint Hill, Virginia, as a gift. Later in the day, we also had some wine aboard the bus as we rolled along. all quite civilized. That afternoon, we stopped at two interesting museums in Berlin. We visited a small park outside the compound that is now the Allied Museum to see a statue of horses and the downed Berlin Wall. I will let Gary Powers tell you more about that.
Here we are at the Allied Museum in downtown Berlin. Behind me is the statue of the day the wall came down. It was sculpted by Beryl Goodnight. Shortly after the wall fell, it was commissioned for 3 different locations. One location is here in Berlin next to the Allied Museum. One is at the George Bush Presidential Library, and I want to say one is in New York City near the UN. In addition, there was a limited edition number of smaller ones made, about yay big, that are a depiction of this historic moment when the Berlin Wall fell in November of 1989. So this is one of the many stops on the Gary Powers Cold War Espionage Tour that we did this week. Enjoy.
So yes, it was President Bush Sr. He was here himself to dedicate it in 1998.
Then next door to the park, the Allied Museum, which is in a suburban part of town that had been part of the American base where the U.S. military were stationed during the Cold War, including the Schneider family. And that included a large theater that was used as part of the community gathering place for U.S. military that were stationed there.
The other one is in Norway, in Bordeaux, and that is dealing with stories from the Cold War. It doesn't matter if you lived through the Cold War your own, or if you're just 15 years old and say, I have no clue about the Cold War. That is also a statement we'd like to know. So talking about the Allied Museum, so we were found in 1994 when the Allies left the city. And as I said, we were trying to collect as much as we can in this 6 months that the Allies were still here.
The Allied Museum was one of the best museums we visited, with a good mix of artifacts and a great guide, and one of the later Checkpoint Charlie booths that we got to go into and tour. You would have had to go through one of these booths to enter and exit East Berlin.
We've exited Checkpoint Charlie.
by a Russian sentry in East Germany. He was a member of the USMLM, the United States Military Liaison Mission.
Again, more pieces of the Berlin Wall.
And the building over there is the Outpost Cinema. That was one of the first buildings that the Americans erected in Berlin, and that was built in 1953. And it's a very nice building. It's under construction preservation, and we will go inside this theater and cinema later. On the former car park of the cinema and the library, we display a couple of our large exhibits. Only a couple. We have much more. We have military fighting vehicles, we have tanks, we have a UE helicopter, we have a lot of more stuff to display, but we don't have the space. Nevertheless, the biggest one is behind you. That is the British Hastings. And this plane is the biggest plane that took part in the Berlin Area in 1948-1949. This is here as a symbol of the Berlin Area, and it was. We will go inside the plane later, and I will answer a couple of questions about the plane later in the plane itself.
Yeah, you're clearly right. Clearly you're not because you're right. No, that other person. Okay, you gotta find something else. Okay, well, watch our heads.
Yeah.
This had a variety of displays, including a plane that was part of the Berlin airlift. An interesting piece of history, especially the bathroom area. On the outside, a couple of handsome guys were doing a photo session by the propellers. One of the straight women thought, "Oh, good-looking men," and she went over for a selfie with them, not knowing then, or later, or now, that they were part of the Berlin gay leather community.
To give you a better idea and to keep in mind how the situation was in those days, we used the very first satellite photos from Berlin. We got them from the CIA Historical Department in the 90s, and they made it in 3rd of May 1965. So this photo was made in May 1965. You can recognize easily Tempelhof Airfield, easily Siegessäule and Brandenburg Gate, the other airfield in Tegel, and the third airfield is over here, that is Gotha. You see the three sectors: French sector in the north, British sector in the middle, American sector here in the south, and the red line is the Berlin Wall between West Berlin and East Berlin, what most people knew as the Berlin Wall. But the blue line between West Berlin and East Germany is also a border and also impossible to overcome. And if you count together the red line and the blue line that surrounded West Berlin, you have a distance of 160 kilometers. Nearly, 100 miles. And you can see that West Berlin was really encapsulated in East Berlin. And all the yellow marked areas are areas that they were used by the Soviet forces or the East German forces, and the number of soldiers, Allied soldiers in West Berlin were somehow between 10,000 and 12,000 soldiers altogether. And the number of soldiers in East Germany, National Volksarmee, as well as Soviet forces were well over 400,000. So you can actually see that West Germany was surrounded by East German areas, barracks and Luftruppenübungsplätze.
And where are we today in this map?
Here's the Allied Museum.
Right there.
Mission vehicles are forbidden to go behind the side. A lot of flights were recognized in Germany. The missions just ignored them. Of course, these were East German signs, and the mission ignored everything that was East German. They only deal with the Soviets. So if they had any problems, you just ignore the starting, say you want to talk to the next Soviet. That's what they did. You have a photo of Nicholson and a photo of Mariatti, and you see I mentioned the crash. And look at the drivers mentioned that people survived this crash. And they were waiting for the French car for 7 days. They knew the French car are regularly coming to visit Halle to look at the barracks. And they visited pretty regularly, and they were waiting in each street for more than 7 days with trucks for the mission car. And then the mission car came. History of Berlin. These are original 6.5 meters of the Berlin spy tunnel. Again, original, I don't have to mention that. The idea of the spy tunnel came from Vienna. As you might know, Vienna was also divided and they went to Potsdam every day because they had the permission to travel East Germany. We are never in Germany. They had the permission to travel East Germany except because that building is under construction preservation. We are not allowed to change much, which is not ideal if you want to build a museum somewhere. So we had to keep former orchestra pit. This is orchestra pit. We had to keep obviously the balcony, even though on the German law, so put it that way. Summer of '94, over it was totally forbidden for people to go to the balcony for whatever reasons we couldn't find out. It was a former cylinder amphitheater and civilian equipment production weapon missed and we can see later. At the very beginning, there are the original membership boxes of the NSDAP party, the Nazi party. Millions and millions of members kept those boxes. They were stored here in Berlin, and you can see though, in this district. And the Americans were running this, and it is called Berlin documents. The Americans had access to all original membership files of the National Socialist Party. And they put it here, they got it in Bavaria, and they put it here to Berlin to give the British and the French, and also the Russians, a chance to check if the people made correct answers in the identification questionnaire, which is also displayed here today. And in this Quadratura, we have the French, the British, the American, and the Russian generals who were deciding what to do with Berlin as a whole. And on the left-hand side, we have the military presence with the American chief.
back to the bus and to the real Checkpoint Charlie, very much a tourist trap in the downtown part of Berlin. We were informed to be very careful for pickpockets, which of course put all of us on guard. We all made it through unscathed. Now, the Checkpoint Charlie Museum is a bit more fractured with a lot of different displays. Not that well curated, but filled with artifacts and objects. And how can we forget the United States President Ronald Reagan, who historically said, Gorbachev, pull this wall down. He is represented throughout a variety of museums that we visited on the 2023 Gary Powers Cold War Espionage, quote-unquote, spy tour. One of the things that I found very interesting was the awareness of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. This was something that we saw throughout our visit to Germany and the Czech Republic on the 2023 Gary Powers Cold War Espionage, quote-unquote, spy tour. We then boarded the bus and headed back to the NH Hotel for our last night and last dinner in Berlin. With day 2 complete, we all went back to the hotel for a good night's rest and ready to pick up and load up for day 3 and on our next adventure and our next hotel on the 2023 Gary Powers Cold War Spy Tour. Our man Lance. While this is indeed the Gary Powers Cold War Espionage or Spy Tour, and Gary was a constant presence and a resident expert, after all, it is his tour. CHA, the tour operator, provided a very experienced tour guide that stayed with us throughout the whole tour. A Brit, but more of a 20th century European citizen. Quite an amicable chap who was also quite a character, and I often referred to some of his sayings as Lanceisms. You will see more of Lance throughout our trip as he met us at the airport in Berlin and was with us day and night, and then dropped us back when we departed for the USA. He, along with Laszlo, our bus driver, more about him later, were always with us, and most importantly, taking care of whatever we needed. 2 really great guys.